I think back to 20-year-old me, and if I could have a conversation with her, there's a few things I would say. Also, if you are in your 20s, definitely let me know if you're going through any of these things or if you can relate. Or maybe you're my age, 39, late 30s, or you're already embarking in your 40s decade. What would you tell your younger self? What would you want them to know or to reaffirm, validate? Because I know our 20s can be very scary, intimidating. You think you know everything, but then you really don't the older you get. But then the things you do know, you tend to question. So with that said, there are 7 things I've kind of gathered. These each can be its own separate video, but what came to mind immediately without really overthinking it was 1, the topics of discernment, friendship, self-care, healing, recovery, money, and personality. How did I land on these 7 things and why? With discernment, it's like the sooner you learn it and apply it into your life, the better off you will be. It doesn't mean that you always have to insert yourself to prove you're right. Being right isn't always the right decision. Sometimes you just need to know when it's the right time to communicate, or the right time to react, or the right time to walk away. And I know that can be easier said than done, but the type of person that I am and was even back then, I'm a non-confrontational person. And I always went with my intuition, but oftentimes I would not say certain things because I didn't want to disrupt the vibe or come off as bold or inappropriate. And that stems from when I was 20 years old, I ended up getting saved and going to church. It was definitely not on my bingo card back then. But at that age, I was having a hard time transitioning from high school into college. And then once I hit 20, I was like, I am a grown adult. What do I do? You know, a lot of my friends have moved on. The new friends that I have made, it's kind of just through sports, but we don't really hang out. I didn't really have what they call nowadays like a third place. And for me, that ended up being church. Somehow, some way, one of my teammates introduced me to church, and immediately just, I was overstimulated, but there were certain things that in my gut, I felt like some things are wrong, but most of this feels right. So let me not rock the boat with what I have to say. But the things that I did say out loud ended up becoming true. And as time went on and I grew older, I realized, wow, my intuition has always been right. I just don't express it that often because sometimes it just feels so outlandish that I don't want to risk losing friendships or, you know, the relationships that I have built. I don't want those to fall apart because I have something to say. So I was often just quiet throughout a lot of my 20s, my early 20s, you know, until my church era kind of all that ended up crumbling. And I'm so grateful for the friends that I have to this day through those relationships. But that eventually led down to a path towards, you know, making very dramatic decisions, much more drinking and all of that. So the reason I brought up friends is because I would tell my younger self that I don't have to remain friends with someone out of guilt or because no one else wants to be their friend. And that's coming from my own, I think I was projecting on the times when I felt like I didn't have any friends throughout that transitional period, even when I was younger, you know, being the quiet, shy kid and just kind of feeling left out due to my own shyness and anxieties. I think I carried that on into adulthood like Captain Save-A-Ho or something, because Captain Save-A-Friend, because I always felt like I want to be friends with everyone. I could be friends with everyone. Everyone likes me. I'm going to do things, you know, everyone's going to like me. And then I, started working around age 20 as well. That's when I started my real estate career. And don't get me wrong, I had a lot of great times and memories with all of the friends that I have had over the years. But the ones that are no longer in my life, I look back at how those friendships first formulated in my 20s. And there was no real solid foundation or even quality to affirm the fact that we should all be friends or that we should all hang out together. I think the commonality besides, work or sports was drinking, and then once that kind of disappeared or I started growing up and maturing, a lot of those relationships kind of fell to the wayside. Realizing that I don't have to remain friends with people out of guilt or their lack of community, or what I consider loneliness. That's was something for me to heal, which brings me into self-care and healing. Point blank period, go to therapy. Yeah. I wasn't against therapy, and I definitely will have a separate conversation about my journey with therapy and self-care, but it was just a lack of knowledge, being a student athlete and then getting a job, entering the workforce, aka turning pro into the real world. Then eventually, being immersed in the party world. It wasn't really a big conversation amongst my friends. And then as I got older, I learned that some of my friends were in therapy, and I was just like, oh, I don't think that's for me. But little did I know that therapy is for everyone. It doesn't matter if you don't feel like your troubles are troubling enough or you don't have any traumas. I think therapy can also be good for preventative care. Which brings me into my next point in healing. Grief will be the heaviest cross I will have to bear. It will be the heaviest experience I will ever endure. And if I got the proper help that I needed or had the proper outlets that I desperately needed, but I didn't know I needed at the time, I definitely feel like a lot of the bumps in my roads or the blocks in my roads wouldn't have been as harsh. It wouldn't have felt as unexpected because I would have had the tools and the education and the language to deal with certain situations, especially surrounding loss of family members, or friendships or whatever the case, growing up even. Therapy definitely would have been something I could have benefited from back then. So which brings me to my next point, recovery. And all I will say with that is alcohol is a long walk down the hall. And it's okay to stop and see what's in the other rooms. Quote by me when I was drunk. Self-care, healing, recovery, it's all encompassed. But I spent a bulk of my 20s, like many of us, partying, drinking, hungover, overdrafted, underpaid. It took away value time that I could have invested in getting to know myself, getting to know others, healing the wounds that were already open with the proper mechanisms and tools and, like I said, language. But instead, I coped with alcohol, and I didn't realize this at the time until fast forward, I experienced a great loss in my life, and I had a sudden change of heart with my perspective with alcohol. And as I talked about in my 40 Days Sober video and how my journey with drinking has evolved over the years, but I think I would have just drank less in my 20s. I would have drank a lot less. Going into my next point, money, invest in the stock market. Point blank period. Whether you believe in it or not, learn about it. Learn about it and invest. Start with $50 a month until you could max it out, until you make enough to max it out every month. And that's something I did not do in my 20s because all of my money was going into the expensive car that I bought because I wanted to show off. It went into partying every single day. On top of that, I was promoting parties. So I was outside all the time. And then when I was at work, I was recovering. and make you money to go to the next weekend. So it was just this vicious cycle of fun, but fun with no bounds and no point of stopping until life hit me really hard and forced me to stop. Where in 2011, I had the worst year of my life. And I'm grateful for that, but I'm also, as I'm reflecting back on like 20-year-old me, 20-something-year-old me, I was just a lost soul, lost puppy at the time. And when it comes to money management, financial literacy, education, it's cool. And I think that was something that I always strived for, is to do cool things. And therapy just wasn't cool. Saving money, the stock market, stuff that I do now, not drinking, just wasn't cool to me at that time. And I had this mindset that I'm only going to do cool things, because in my teens and even in middle school, truthfully, I didn't think of myself as that cool, simply because I just wasn't the most popular. And later I found out how most people became popular and was like, oh, never mind, I am cool. And that's why I said in that same video of me talking about being sober for this time right now and how I've spent a year sober, that I am that girl. I am cool. I am enough. I'm so grateful for the language now and the education to be able to manage my emotions, my feelings, and my past experiences, because #no regrets at all. But it's more so, okay, if I can lend some advice or tips or guidance to a younger version of me who's out there watching this video, or maybe it's one of my nieces or nephews, then I will. And I'm always going to be a resource here for you to ask questions, to guide you, because the stuff that I didn't think was cool to me is super cool now. And looking back, it's like, oh, I had the capacity to do that. I was just distracted by hangovers, debt, and uncomfortable shoes that I hated wearing, but I still wore them anyway. Okay? So my 20s, don't get me wrong, I had a blast. But that's where Fia Lily was born. And to this day, I've gotten to travel. I've made the best friends that I have to this day. My family. I have a lot of love in my life that really fuels me. Again, I don't always have to be right. I am that girl. I'm cool. I'm enough. And I was always that girl, even back then at 20, 25, 27. And there's no saying that had I implemented all these, that my life would have been better or worse. I don't know. But if I could have sprinkled some game on younger me, it would have surrounded all of these topics. And I'm still learning. I'm still evolving. I'm still growing, even at my big age right now at 39, going on 40. But all I know is that who I am has always remained at my core. I just took the long path to get back to her. I just took the scenic route to realize, oh, I didn't really have to do too many changes or make too many adjustments, because I've always been this person. It just now involves new personalities, new people, different jobs and careers and businesses and environments and traveling and all of that, right? Let me know what you would tell your younger self. That's what I would say. And I'm grateful for my 20s. I'm grateful for all the fun times. And cheers to more. And it's your girl Lils, aka Lily like the flower, aka Fia Lils. And this is Fia Life. Thank you for watching.